Alright, those toys. The infamous episode where Data gets kidnapped. One that's a particularly memorable episode because you have a guy who is a trader who has an extensive private collection, and he also has a very unscrupulous personality. He goes to very extensive lengths to acquire rare items, and it's kind of hinted that he might actually be the reason some of these items are as rare as they are. At any rate, though, what would you do with this in a TTRPG setting? Well, there's actually two main aspects of this episode. One is that the bad guy of the episode, Kivas Fajo, has quite a lot of exotic tech on his hands, some of which are actually things that would be genuinely interesting as loot. Like, in the next generation, personal force fields are not something that you normally see people have. But Kivas Fajo actually has one. And that's something that's interesting. Another thing, of course, is that Kivas Fajo, the reason the people in the main cast care is that Kivas Fajo has kidnapped Data because he wants to add Data to his collection. Now, that particular aspect, the idea of that a member of the crew has been kidnapped and you need to go rescue them / figure out that they were kidnapped, because Kivas Fajo did actually make a serious effort to conceal the fact that Data was still alive. Now, this is two different things that you could split up, because one, the whole Zibalian collector thing is pretty overblood. Kivas Fajo was kind of sort of a unique anomaly when he first showed up, but we later have more of them. But, having a kidnapping plot doesn't require you to use Zibalians. There's plenty of other races that you could have kidnap someone for some reason or other. A really, really long list of reasons so you can have a kidnap plot. Also, whether you want to kidnap one of the actual players or an NPC, those are also very, very different stories in terms of how you actually play them out. And for this episode, though, I would definitely categorize Data as a player insert character, because there's a lot of story that focuses on having Data interact with Kivas Fajo and Varia, and in doing so is actually instrumental in how the plot plays out. Other things that are interesting about this, because of the fact that Fajo has such an extensive collection, it's interesting and stuff. You have several things in his collection that are not seen in other episodes, or very rarely seen. One is Varia. We don't actually have any idea where she came from. It's actually one of those cases where a character is more or less explicitly stated to be not the same race as anyone else we've ever seen before or since, which is a bit odd, but it kind of goes into the whole collector aspect. It's like he has an assistant who is a member of a race that nobody else in this part of the galaxy has ever seen before. Eh, not really something that you would normally consider as a collectible, but you know, Zibalians are kind of insane like that. Or some of them are anyways. It's really not clear exactly what's considered normal by Zibalian standards. Anyway, though, the ship. This is actually not a particularly noteworthy ship in terms of what the vessel itself actually is. Kivas Fajo uses it to hold his collection, and when it says capable of warp 3 here, I'm pretty sure warp 3 or better. I suspect warp 3 is basically just the speed that it was seen moving in the episode, not necessarily a stated max speed, because 3 is really slow and barely capable of getting to other solar systems. Also, he actually had a bunch of relatively advanced technology on board, so having it be only warp 3, yeah, having it limited to warp 3 seems unlikely. Anyway, on with that. The Jovis itself is really not all that interesting. It seems to have, generally av available stuff for freighters. Doesn't even look all that interesting. Because, like, this thing's a studio model. Yeah, this is one of those alien ships that got reused in several episodes. Oh, come on. TNG Season 3, Husnak. D. Oh, well, this is the escape pod. Hmm. Oh. Well, this might be the one I'm thinking of. Ah, here we are, Jovis. Yes, a physical. The physical model here was used in quite a lot of episodes, and it comes out looking differently because of the fact that the way they built the model, just shooting it from a different angle. You're like, oh, that's different. Even though it's really just the same thing. Boy. Also, it's one of those things where they would add bits to it, maybe recolor it, whatever. Anyways, point is, it's very similar to a lot of other vessels. So the ship used in this episode is one of those things where your crew wouldn't really have a reason to single it out as a special ship until after they find out that one of their crew got kidnapped and is on board it. Other interesting things. He has a few extremely rare animals. One thing about the lapling that's interesting is that it's believed to be the last one in existence. That's one of those bits that I'm like, how is he so certain it's the last one? Also, having it be the last living one seems a bit of a minor flex when you consider that it's probably only going to live a few years in captivity. And then there will be the um, one that died most recently. Another interesting thing that comes up in this episode as a prop is the T Disruptor, which in the episode wasn't something that was seemingly recognizable. So having someone pull one of these out, even if it was someone getting a good look at the pistol, they'd be like, oh, it's an energy pistol. What kind of energy pistol is it? I don't know. And the interesting thing about this one is that it's generally believed that only 5 of them have ever existed. However, the tech needed to make them really isn't that exotic. And presumably it is possible to duplicate if you know how. Which, as a general rule, people don't, because it's not something any of the major empires actually consider to be useful. So they're not trying to make duplicates of them. They don't want to have hundreds or thousands of these things out there. They'd rather stick with regular disruptors. In terms of practicality, they're just better. Anyway, though. Oh, also, that's another interesting point. The Federation banned them, but it's not necessarily something that other empires have banned, so, you could theoretically find one somewhere. Again, this particular style of energy pistol is something that you actually see in multiple episodes. And we know that not all of these energy pistols are actually using the same internal workings. And that's what makes the Verity Disruptor itself so unrecognizable, is that what makes them a Verity Disruptor is solely the internal mechanism and not the actual pistol itself. Which is an interesting plot point in several episodes, is that having something look a certain way with a certain shape and stuff is often entirely aesthetic. You could rig a pistol that looks like this to use the same internals as a Federation issue stun phaser. And here we have examples of people using similar looking energy pistols. So, Verity Disruptors. Unless someone knows it, and that a certain specific pistol is a Verity Disruptor, they would need to scan it and analyze the scan data results of the internal workings of it in order to conclude whether it is or isn't. Otherwise, they just see it as exotic hardware. And of course, there's the possibility that someone would scan it and be like, oh, that's a disruptor model I haven't seen before. I wonder what makes that different. Because they just don't know what one is. Also, it's a possibility anyways. Anyway, it's not actually a particularly interesting plot point. It's something that he has because of how few of them were actually made. Again, due to them being impractical, and the only thing that makes them interesting is considered to be a bad thing. Oh, also, yeah, is that Kivas Fajo is believed to have four of the of five that were ever produced. We see Data get his hands on one of them and attempt to kill Kivas Fajo with it, but we don't actually see where all of them are. So it's possible that, well, actually, that's another thing, is that we don't really have particularly detailed information about how many of them actually exist. I know. It's one of the things like only five were ever produced. It's one of the major plot points. Well, if I remember correctly, that was Kivas Fajo talking about it. And if only five of them actually exist, four of which are in Kivas Fajo's personal possessions, why did the Federation ban them? Yeah. Anyways, that is actually a plot point, though. Something you could possibly uh, ponder. Anyway, so another interesting thing is that Kivas Fajo actually had a personal force field. Yeah, kind of an interesting touch. So overall, with this episode, writing having a member of the ship's crew get captured and held prisoner, sure. Putting in the plot device to fake some sort of an accident as being a way to have a cover story, yeah, that's doable. An, ah, an eccentric collector with exotic technology, yeah, sure, why not? One of the things about this that's interesting is that Kivas Fajo, most of his collection is actually harmless and kind of boring. It's like, oh, it's a rare baseball card from Earth that, oh, wait, no, no one actually cares about those. I mean, yes, it's an interesting oddity because of its age, and that's the only reason that it's interesting is that it's old. Mm. Anyways, though, that's actually about it. It's like there's a variety of interesting plot elements that this has, but actually playing this episode out as is, nah, wouldn't do that. I mean, I'm not saying you can't or shouldn't, just that it feels like one of those episodes where, like, taking apart the plot and mixing the pieces with something else would be more practical and beneficial for a TTRPG than simply trying to play it as a module. It is something that is small enough and self-contained enough that you could. It's just that it would be a little boring. At any rate, that's my thoughts on the matter. Let me know in the comments what you think.